$41,000. That's what my HOA board stole from me in 11 jars of honey. They fined me $500 a day for keeping bees legally protected under state law. And when I refused to pay, they didn't just tear down my hives, they took them. They sold my honey at a boutique 2 towns over for $40 a jar and called it artisanal neighborhood honey. They made one mistake. They forgot bees don't just make honey, they make a signature, a chemical fingerprint of every flower they ever touched. So here's the question I want you to sit with for the next 10 minutes. What do you do when the people who stole from you legally own the fine, the lock, and the lawyer, but you own the proof? Before this is over, you're going to watch a woman in a beekeeping veil hand a forensic lab report to a police detective in a gravel parking lot, and watch a boutique owner's face change in real time. You're going to watch an HOA president stand at a podium and deny under oath that he ever touched my hives, while the surveillance footage from his own garage is already sitting on a prosecutor's desk. And you're going to watch that same man's Escalade get repossessed in front of the clubhouse he spent 3 years redecorating with money that was never his to spend. I'm a residential appraiser. 10 years of walking into other people's houses and reading the story the walls don't say out loud. Water damage painted over, foundations patched the week before a sale, permits that don't match what's actually built. That's the job. You learn to trust documentation over people because people lie and paperwork mostly doesn't. I started keeping bees 3 years ago after my divorce because I needed something in my life that ran on its own schedule and didn't need me to explain myself to it. 4 hives tucked behind a cedar fence where nobody could see them from the street. I registered them with the county. I read the state pollinator protection statute front to back before I ever installed a frame because that's what I do. I read the paperwork first. 2,200 jars of honey a year split between neighbors and a Saturday farmer's market table, plus a habit I never told anyone about, weighing every harvest and logging it in a spreadsheet because appraisers don't estimate, we measure. That spreadsheet is the reason this story has an ending you're going to want to screenshot. Grant Callahan ran our HOA board for 6 years, and he ran it the way he wore his watch, where everyone could see it. Gold Rolex, white Cadillac Escalade parked sideways across 2 guest spots, and a line he said to me personally, standing in my own driveway, "Rules are rules for people who can't afford exceptions." He said it smiling. He believed it. Grant didn't hate bees. Grant hated that something on my property was making money he wasn't collecting a piece of, and once he found a fine he could attach to it, legal or not, he was never going to let it go. Here's the thing Grant never bothered to look up, and it's the entire reason I had an ace he never saw coming. In the majority of states with pollinator protection statutes on the books, an HOA cannot fine, restrict, or remove a legally registered backyard apiary through a covenant that was written before the law existed. The state statute overrides the covenant, full stop. The same way a fire code overrides a homeowner's preference for wooden shingles. Grant's fines weren't just aggressive. They were void from the moment he issued the first one, and every fine he sent me after that became a paper trail of a board knowingly violating state law, which matters later because intent is the difference between a civil dispute and a criminal one. And here's the part that turned this from a fight into a trap. When an HOA seizes personal property, even something as small as jars of honey, and sells it without a court order, that isn't a covenant violation anymore. That's conversion, and depending on the dollar amount and whether multiple board members coordinated it, it can cross the line into organized theft. I didn't know yet how far they'd go. I just knew that if they ever touched those hives, I wanted a way to prove exactly what left my property and where it went. So tell me, if you'd already read the law and you already knew your board was wrong, would you have stopped there and just sent them the statute, or would you have let them keep making the mistake on camera until it was too late for them to take it back? Tell me in the comments before you keep watching, because my answer is coming up, and it's not the polite one. I sent Grant the statute, certified mail, county seal, the whole thing. 3 days later, a new letter arrived, $500 a day, retroactive, for unauthorized agricultural structures, with a deadline of 2 weeks to remove the hives voluntarily. I didn't remove anything. Instead, I opened all 4 hives, checked the frames, and slid a small waterproof sensor under the base of each one, the kind beekeepers use to track colony weight remotely so you know exactly when a hive is harvested without opening it. I synced all 4 to an app on my phone. Then I waited because Grant had just told me in writing exactly what he planned to do next. The deadline passed. Nothing happened for 4 days, long enough that I almost believed he'd backed off. Then my phone buzzed at 6:14 on a Tuesday morning, all 4 hives 40 pounds lighter, all at once. I pulled up the property camera I'd mounted on the shed under a fake birdhouse and watched 3 men in HOA polo shirts load my hive supers into the back of a landscaping trailer, while Grant stood in my driveway directing them like he was hosting an open house. She said, "You can't take those, they're my property, I have the statute." He said, "Talk to the board's attorney." Then he got in his Escalade and left. I didn't call the police that morning, I opened my spreadsheet instead. Quick recap before this gets worse. The fines were already illegal. The seizure just made it a property crime. And one detail nobody on that board thought about, pollen is basically a barcode. Every flower species leaves a different signature under a microscope, and a hive's honey carries the exact signature of everything within a 2-mile radius of where it sat. 11 days later, a friend sent me a photo from a boutique 2 towns over. Small glass jars, craft paper labels, artisanal neighborhood honey, $40 each, a shelf card crediting proceeds to community beautification. I drove over, bought 2 jars in cash, said nothing beyond thank you, and photographed the batch numbers that night. They matched my sensor logs from the morning of the seizure, the exact weight my hives lost, split across 11 jars, down to the ounce. This is where it stopped being a covenant dispute. I called a private lab that does forensic pollen analysis for agricultural fraud cases and sent them both jars alongside a comparison sample from my own registered hives. The report came back 9 days later, a 94% floral match, consistent with the same 2-mile radius, consistent with the same season, consistent with theft, in writing from a lab whose director had testified in court before. I sat with that report for exactly 1 night before I called a detective. The board held their monthly meeting 2 weeks later, open to residents, agenda item 6, landscaping fund update. Grant told 40 neighbors the fund had grown thanks to community partnerships. I stood up in my beekeeping jacket and asked him to explain the batch numbers on the jars his board had been selling, the ones that matched my hives to the ounce. He said the honey came from a landscaping contractor. I said, "Then you won't mind the detective outside comparing that answer to the sworn statement you already gave him." The detective walked in on cue. Grant never got to answer item 6. 2 months later, the district attorney's office filed theft and conversion charges against 3 board members. The HOA's insurer refused to cover legal fees because the acts were intentional, and the association dissolved under its own legal bills, including Grant's Escalade, repossessed in the clubhouse parking lot in full view of the neighbors he used to fine. One more thing before I finish. If your HOA has ever fined you for something you later found out was legally protected, drop the word protected in the comments. I read every one, and I'm going to start pulling stories from that thread for future cases. $41,000 in stolen honey, 11 jars, 4 sensors that cost less than one of Grant's dinner reservations. 94%, that's the number that ended a 6-year reign, 1 appraiser's spreadsheet, 1 lab report, 1 podium he never got to finish standing at. I didn't win because I was angrier than Grant. I won because I read the paperwork before he did, and I kept reading it after he stopped being careful. That's the only edge any of us really has against people who think the rules only apply downward. So back to the question I asked you at the start, what do you do when the people who stole from you own the fine, the lock, and the lawyer? You let them keep the lock, you go get the proof. If this one hit different, subscribe, because next week's case doesn't involve bees. It involves a swimming pool, a forged inspection report, and a board that's about to find out I used to appraise houses for a living.